Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing incredibly well, and I hope you're keeping yourself lovely and refreshed with some invigorating sparkling drinks, because I've got a lovely story for you tonight. But before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up, and let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah, and all your lovely listeners, there's a picture hanging on our living room wall, if you can call it that. It's where a television would ultimately go, if of course we could afford a wall-mounted television set, that is. It's actually a picture of the world, a map of different countries and places that my mother dreamed of visiting one day. She loved the idea of visiting Northwest Christmas Island, as the wistful sound of the name aroused the enterprising, intrepid explorer within her, that was itching to make its appearance known. Subsequently, she discovered that Northwest Christmas Island is actually inhabited by crabs, so it somehow lost its illustrious appeal. My mother framed this map of the world when she was about 16 years old, my age actually. I think for her the map represented a languishing, voracious yearning inside her, where she could break away from the current confinements or internments of her life, like a wild, unbridled horse, galloping across the open plains, free to roam at will, wherever she may choose to go. Or like a bird on a wing, soaring aimlessly into the cobalt sky, allowing the natural kinetic rhythms of the wind to navigate its course. My mother desperately wanted to be free, just like that, without being governed by responsibilities, commitments, or the drudgerous demands of her daily life. But she had no wings like a bird to fly, nor did she possess the speed, strength, courage, and tenacity of a wild stallion. But when she was a young girl, she dreamed. We're all allowed to dream, are we not? I think the map of the world on our wall epitomizes her impassioned fantasies of escaping to exotic locations where she can drink colourful cocktails on the beach and watch the resplendent tangerine sun setting over the peninsula from the grandiose balcony of an ostentatious beach house with views over her own private beach. Regretfully, the walls in our trailer house are not robust or strong, like walls you will find in your average home, as the walls of a trailer home literally crumble beneath your fingers like chalk. So how that frame map of the world has stayed hanging up on that wall for so long is a baffling, enigmatic mystery. It's now so old, it's yellowing in its frame. My mother sees the worst in everything, and even this map of the world has become victimized by her bitter resentment, for to her it represents and embodies all that is beyond her grasp, all she can never hope to procure. Bloody cheek, she says. All these places I can't afford to visit. This map is a big tease, provoking me into wanting something that I can never ever have. Even something as benign as a map on the wall has become a victim of my mother's disgusted abuse, for my mother sees darkness in everything. It would seem that even a lone benevolent map on the wall cannot escape her wrath. Ostensibly in associating all she sees with darkness, it helps my mother to fail to see her own darkness from within herself, for she never wanted to see the dark, empty shadows of hopelessness, despair, all-consuming internal turmoil and self-revulsion that have entangled her own life. For these days every part of her is wilting away, as if the soul within her is abandoning its shell, and only a tiny silvery web of who she once was remains within her. Sometimes I see flashes of that old person smiling back at me, like fleeting flashes of another time that once was. But these days she is inconspicuously fading away before me, and she has become her meth addiction. And so it was at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when I returned to the trailer that day, after an exhausting 8-hour morning shift at Wendy's to make some much-needed cash. I have learnt to survive in my solo journey through life, in what my mother describes as a dog-eat-dog world. You see, I told you she sees the dark side in everything. When I was 9 years old, my mother had 3 addictions that ransomed her life with a gluttonous, insatiable demand that could not be satisfied: cigarettes, alcohol, and men. But she soon grew wary of those things, as the craving for even more endorphin rushes was pathological, So she progressed to shooting herself up with meth, which is the passage of no return. For once you are sitting on the meth train, the journey lasts for 7 years for most, and then it's over, as the train is derailed, and you have to disembark from this world. There have been times I've called the ambulance to our trailer home when my mother has overdosed on meth. On those occasions I've found her lying unresponsive on the filthy grey carpet of our trailer, sometimes with the needle still stuck in her arm. This insufferable meth addiction is ravaging. It's like a plane hijacker holding you to ransom, as it destroys body, mind, soul and spirit, sucking you dry until nothing is left apart from the crisp outer shell that once contained your essence. It's hard to believe my mother was actually pretty once. I find that almost impossible to fathom, as unkind as that may sound. When I see old photographs of her, I cannot see any commonality between my mother and the fresh, pretty blonde girl in the picture, smiling into the lens with an ebullient enthusiasm. My mother is an emaciated stick. She looks like dry, crinkled leather. She's brittle, as if she could snap at any moment. Her bones rip through her body like gnarled, knotty roots, piercing through the earthen floor with a forceful, fierce tenacity, while her papery, leathery skin clings to her head so tightly that it looks more like a skull than a human face, and her hollow eyes are like inverted red marbles lined with dark, shadowy crevices. So pretty, my mother most certainly is not. Our trailer is possibly the worst-looking trailer in the entire park. I regret to have to admit that, as it reflects rather poorly on us. But then my mother has never bothered to care for it. Over the years, I'm the one that has actually scrubbed it clean. For if I had not, we would have certainly lived in squalor. If I was being kind and generous, I would describe our decaying trailer as looking like a buckled-up Coca-Cola can. But if I'm being brutally honest, I would describe it as a ramshackled, crumpled heap of metal that's good for nothing. Everybody in this trailer park is living in a bedraggled, dog-eared trailer, but none in more worse condition than ours. Over the years, the trailer park owner has meant to improve the maintenance, but in truth he's a lazy bugger whom has never bothered to get his arse into gear. When I return home from Wendy's, where I've been serving people burgers and milkshakes all day long, I feel dirty, grubby, sweaty and smelly. I definitely smell of chip fat. I'm about to open the door. The dream catcher that is hanging on a hook on the outside of the trailer just suddenly collapses. It falls to the ground in a mangled, broken heap. I pick up the pieces of net, feathers and wood, but even the netting crumbles in my hand like dust. My mother bought this dream catcher, along with a map of the world before I was born, and now it chooses to snap. At this pregnant moment, I feel the ominous relevance of this marked, poignant, foreboding second, rather like a sharp tug of the heartstrings, almost as if I know in my heart that something dreadful is about to be birthed into my life. I can't shake off this distressing premonition, if it is a premonition at all. It's clouded my mind like a foggy mist on an overcast day. My mother always told me this dream catcher would catch her dreams so that they would come into fruition. But now, after all these years, it chooses to just break at this second. Why now? I can't shake the bodeful, inauspicious feeling that has seized my attention, poked me in the gut so very hard that I can taste the nausea rising up at the back of my throat. And so it is with great trepidation that I reluctantly push open the trailer door, hesitantly at first. It creaks open, ever so slightly, and then I widen it. Oh, I breathe a sigh of relief. I can see my mother lying there on the couch, as that's where I would naturally expect to find her any day of the week. For she clings to that couch day and night like a raft drifting across the ocean. If she ever walks away from the couch, there are deep indentations in it from where her body has been lying all day, in the same position. But as I walk into the trailer, my mother looks at me through eyes that are like empty sockets. "Hi, Mum," I say. "Are you all right?" I don't know why I always ask her the same question every time I see her. Are you all right? I mean, my mother has never been all right a day in her life since she became hooked on meth. At best, she's barely functioning. At worst, she's completely zonked out in an illusory, fictitious world of her own making. My mother's blank, emotionless face stares at me vacantly and barely acknowledges me at all. But I don't flinch, as this isn't unusual for me. Ever since she's been on meth, I've just been like a passing ship in her life that moors in the same jetty every night. Over the years, my mother has barely even known who I am anymore. I've never taken it personally, of course. I'm a fighter and a survivor. I always have been. I've seen what drugs have done to people in our town. I decided from a very young age that I would never be desperate enough to put a needle in my skin or shoot up. I knew it would be the beginning of the end for me. I had ascertained that no matter how bad my life became, that ending up addicted to drugs would never ever be my lot. My mother's map of the world was symbolic to me, of a brighter, better future that I would one day grab hold of with both of my hands, and when I did, there would be nothing that could stop me. Even at school I was top of my class, reaching for the stars. I knew the significance of a good education, how my grades might get me out of this entangled snare known as my life, and out of this town where drugs and alcohol had decimated the entire community, well, almost all of it. I see the needle being pressed into a vein. My mother's eyes are fixed on the map of the world. She's condemning it yet again. "Bloody map," she says. "Such a tease. I hate the damn thing." And then my mother's head falls back. She sinks back into the couch. Her eyes roll back in her sockets, and then she becomes still. Her body flops over like a rag doll. Her eyes become glazed like a dead fish. And in that moment, I know she's dead. But I feel nothing. Absolutely nothing. I had known one day that this would invariably happen, and today is that day. I thought I would feel something, but my mind is vacant from every feeling and thought. My feelings are just numb. I feel nothing at all. By all intents and purposes, it had started off like any normal day for me in the trailer park where I lived with my mother. Nothing about this day gave me even the faintest inkling that in a few hours' time my life would be lying before me in rags, and as a 16-year-old girl, that I was going to have to make some seriously mature decisions that someone as young as myself should never be forced to make, with the help of Sheriff Cox, whom I had known all my life. Needless to say, I was the product of a drunken one-night stand that my mother had with someone else she had met in a bar over 16 years prior, a man called Peter Finnegan, whom had been passing through town that day. My mother had surreptitiously squirreled away his business card, in case she needed to contact him in the foreseeable future, which was something she always did with the men she slept with, as some kind of a security blanket, I suppose. She then informed Peter after I was born that he had fathered a daughter, and that he needed to take responsibility. Suffice to say, to be fair, my father sent my mother child support diligently every month, but I'm sure most of the money she ended up shooting up in her arm with her meth addiction, for I saw none of that money or the evidence of it in my life, not in our refrigerator or even in the wardrobe in my home. I never got to see my father except for a scant few days every year, when he would take me away for a few days to a cottage at the coast. He would spoil me rotten, buy me some clothes and presents, and then I would return home again to my scruffy life. I resented my father bitterly for his non-involvement in my life. I was sure I was the shameful secret that he wished to tuck away in an old abandoned wallet and simply forget about, and he had no knowledge that my mother was a meth addict, for I didn't even enlighten him about that. I sit in the police vehicle with Sheriff Cox shortly after my mother's demise. We both silently watch the coroner's van pick up my mother from the buckled old trailer, placing her on a gurney, covering her with a white sheet, where she's whisked off to the funeral home. She'll be cremated and the ashes returned to me in a silver urn. I know the score. It's commonplace now. I wonder to myself how many other young people have sat with Sheriff Cox in his van like this, as I am now watching my mother being wheeled off on a gurney. Many, I imagine, judging by the bemused expression on Sheriff Cox's face. I can see this event is a regular routine for him, as much as the coffee he drinks daily. I watch him grimace as my mother's deceased body is finally no longer visible, when the coroner's van door is finally slammed. The driver lifts a thumb up to the sheriff. "All done," he shouts, as if he's talking about something as mundane as the weather. I've known Sheriff Cox all my life. He has lifted my mother half drunk off the side of the road, or lying beaten up in a drain, so he has been a secure fixture and fitting in our lives, and he knows me very well. In truth, he's always been exceedingly kind towards me. Sometimes he's popped around to our trailer to see how we're doing. He's dropped off coffee and doughnuts for me and my mother. For a moment, all is silent in the sheriff's car. You could almost hear a pin drop. And then he speaks. "Do you mind, Lulu, if I smoke?" he asks me. "It helps me to smoke at times like this. It takes the edge off the trauma, settles my nerves, you see." "No," I say. "Please go ahead, Sheriff Cox." The sheriff's hands are trembling. He pulls out a cigarette from the pack in his pocket, popping it into his mouth, lighting the end. He breathes in the smoke and puffs out, and then he audibly sighs, almost as if the cigarette smoke has somehow calmed his frazzled nerves. I don't blame him for smoking. It can't be easy being a sheriff in a town where so many people self-destruct.
"I'm sorry for your loss, Lulu," he says, looking at me through his kind blue eyes. "None of this is easy for you. Your mother was quite the beauty once. I remember how stunning she was. And this meth addiction has ravaged her, as it has so many of the people in this town. Promise me this, Lulu. Promise me that it won't ravage you too. I would hate to see you go down the same road as your mother did."
"I promise," I say. "I will never take drugs. Never."
"Now what are we going to do about you?" asked the sheriff. "Do you know your father's telephone number? You can't live here any longer. I'm sure you appreciate that. If I know Jim Collingwood, he will throw you out of the trailer, faster than thunder. If you haven't got a month's rent in advance, you can forget it. Besides, you're too young to rent a trailer. That man's not got any scruples. If you don't pay him cash, he'll expect other forms of payment, especially from a pretty underage young girl like yourself. That man has the morals of an alley cat. So safe around here in the long term, you most certainly are not."
Reluctantly, I give him my father's number. Sheriff Cox makes the call. I sit there awkwardly in the front seat, twiddling my fingers, nibbling my nails. What if my father wants nothing to do with me, I think? Where will I go then? The prospects are grim, but I refuse to give those thoughts airtime. The sheriff has his cell phone on speaker, so I can listen in to the conversation.
"Peter Finnegan speaking," comes my father's voice. "Hello, Mr. Finnegan. This is Sheriff Cox speaking. I'm phoning on behalf of your 16-year-old daughter, Lulu." "Is she all right?" comes my father's panicky voice. At least I think he has the decency to pretend to care about my welfare. That's a promising start. "Lulu's fine. It's just, well, her mother died an hour ago. Lulu is homeless, as you can appreciate." The sheriff is unable to finish his sentence, as my father quickly intercedes. "Lulu's mother died? Are you being serious? She was so young. Is Lulu all right? How's Lulu doing?" "That's right, sir. Lulu's mother died." "But that's absolutely dreadful. What happened? Was it a car accident?" Even the sheriff looks surprised by my father's naive, ingenuous comments that are saturated by extreme ignorance, as my mother never owned a car in her life. I doubt she even knew how to drive. So my father's words reflect his complete non-involvement and apathetic indifference that he has shown towards my life. He knows nothing about my mother beyond the time he met the pretty unassuming giggly blonde at a bar, who lied to him, telling him she was an aspiring medical student. I often wonder how much he'd freak out if he knew what my mother looked like now, moments before her death, a 40-year-old woman going on 90. "No, sir, it wasn't a car accident. It was a meth overdose." There is a long, silent pause at the end of the phone, almost as if my father is trying to assimilate everything he is hearing. "But I don't understand," he says again. "She was a doctor. She should have known better, surely. Why would an intelligent, savvy doctor shoot up with meth like this? Mr. Finnegan, Lulu's mother was not a doctor. I don't know where you get that idea from. She was a meth addict, like many people in this God-forsaken town. The question that I need to ask you, sir, is whether you will consider taking charge over your daughter and responsibility until she is of age. She needs a guardian, a loving home, a father who can take care of her. Of course, came my father's voice. My home is Lulu's home. She's my daughter. My house is hers. She can live with me as long as she likes. I should be there in about 3 hours if I leave now, which means I will be there at about 8 or 9 p.m. at night. Please give me the address.
The sheriff spouts the address of the trailer park. My father's voice sounds nonplussed.
Lulu lives in a trailer park? You've got to be kidding me. I had absolutely no idea. That's right, sir. She lives in a trailer park. She has done so all her life.
The sheriff looks at me with a shocked expression on his face.
Does your father know nothing about your life, Lulu? He seems to think your mother is a doctor. He has no idea that she was on drugs. Did you never tell him?
My mother told me never to talk about it when I visited him. He did talk about her being a doctor. I just never corrected him. I figured if he really cared about me, he'd be actively involved in my life, and then you'd know the truth anyway. The sheriff groans.
Oh, Lulu, you should have told your father the truth. You really should have. That was wrong of you to keep all this from him. He sounds like a very nice man to me. If you had told him the truth, I sincerely doubt that you would have remained living in that trailer for so long with a meth addict. Your father sounds like he would have rescued you. It's no life for a 16-year-old girl. You deserve much better for yourself, Lulu. Always remember that.
He pauses for a moment.
Are you sure you're going to be all right, staying at the trailer? You will have a 3-hour wait before your father comes to collect you. Maybe you should have a sleep before he does pick you up. I must confess, you look exhausted, but it's hardly surprising given the traumatic day you've had.
I'll be fine, Sheriff Cox, I promise you. Thank you. Thank you for everything. Thanks for phoning my dad.
It's a pleasure. Any time, Lulu, and Godspeed.
I quickly packed a small duffel bag containing all my worldly possessions, and frankly there weren't many. I took down the map of the world from the wall. I was determined I'd also buy a dream catcher at some stage, for unlike my mother, one day my dreams would be realised. I was not going to abandon them to the wayside like my mother had done, once she had become engaged with meth. I glanced dispassionately around the very bedraggled trailer that had been my home for the last 8 years, with a measure of cavalier and apathetic indifference. It seemed surreal that my mother was now dead. I hadn't shed a tear. What kind of a daughter did that make me? Was I cold, aloof, and heartless, I wondered? I wasn't sure. But all I knew was my mother was better off dead. As awful as that is to concede, I knew it was the absolute truth. Sometimes the truth can be heartless, cold, brazen, tactless, and exceedingly cruel. Truth is like that. It doesn't spare your emotions or feelings. It doesn't cushion the blows or mask the pain. It's clear and as translucent as glass in a window, where nothing is hidden, concealed, or covered up. If I was to miss my mother, I would miss what she could have potentially become, who she could have been in life, if it hadn't been so infeliciously ruptured, like a punctured rubber tire in a truck that eventually grinds to a gridlock as it cannot move forward any more. That was my mother's lot, immobilised to a settee for the rest of her life, by a prison of her own creation, from which there was no reprieve. I retired to my bed for 3 hours, slipping into a deep sleep, for the exhaustion of the day has hijacked my wakefulness. My energy is drained, my attention waning. I wake with a start, almost jumping out of my skin in fright, to find someone pounding loudly on the door at about 9 o'clock at night. For a moment I wonder who's knocking on the door. Then my memories come flooding back. Of course, it's my dad. He's here to pick me up. I draw in a deep breath, climbing out of my bed with my duffel bag flung over my shoulders, containing a handful of clothes I've lived in for years. A few purchased by my dad, others bought from thrift stores, and of course the picture of the world that is clutched tightly in my hands. I move through the tiny little dilapidated trailer, slowly with a measure of trepidation, and then I open the door. My father is standing in the doorway, with a flushed, embarrassed expression upon his face. I think he almost looks ashamed. I was glad I didn't have to hug him, as I was clutching my bag and the picture of the world in my hand, creating a convenient barricade between us. My father doesn't appear to notice. His eyes are astute like a bird of prey, surveying the trailer with a look of horror in his eyes, as if it had never crossed his mind or dawned on him that a daughter of his could live in such impoverished circumstances. I see his eyes glance over the threadbare couch with the huge indentations of my mother's body moulding the furniture into a sculptural whole or impression, the bedraggled rug lying flung across the dingy grey carpet, the coffee table with its ashtrays filled with needles, and a few stray cans of Mountain Dew scattered across the countertops. My father straightens his back. He struggles to get the words out, and then he looks at me sorrowfully. "I had no idea, Lulu. No idea that you lived like this. Why on earth did you not tell me?" I can see my father's eyes are glazing over with tears. He's trying to fight them back with difficulty, but somehow he manages to maintain his composure. Finally, he lets out a huge disgruntled sigh. I believe I see regret and remorse in his eyes. I almost feel sorry for him, but he never suffered like I did. Ignorance is bliss. It shelters you from what you don't want to know. It's in the not knowing that you can abandon your responsibilities without any prickling of a conscience, so you can live your life in the pleasure of your blind oblivion and indifferent apathy. But in my father's dismayed reactions, I begin to discern that my assumptions that my dad is a big loser who didn't care about me a jot were seriously unfounded and very misplaced. My anger that I'd carried with me through my entire life like a heavy backpack might have been unsubstantiated, for the man I am looking at now is a man who would gladly have relinquished my heavy load a long time ago, if only I had had the courage to have told him the truth about my life. Then how different things might have been. "You never asked," I say.
"But Lulu, why did your mother tell me she was a doctor? Why would she make up something incredulous like that? It's completely insane. What on earth was she thinking? She was a meth addict, for goodness sake. She should have seen she was incapable of taking care of you. You should have been entrusted into my charge. Instead, she fed me a web of duplicitous lies."
My mother clung on to what pride she had left. You lose your self-respect when you're an addict. I think she liked you to believe she was a doctor. That was her dream, to become someone of significance, someone that meant something. She didn't want you to know she was an addict. With you she could pretend to be something she wasn't, and for a fleeting moment she could hold her head up high with a bit of dignity, pretend to be what she wanted to be.
But I sent good money to her, very good money, for your school fees, clothes, food, holidays. You should have been living a lot better than this. I contributed significantly to your care. I made sure you were exceedingly well provided for. I can show you the financial transactions that I paid directly into her bank account if you like, that I transferred for you. You should never have been living like this. The mind boggles. Frankly, I'm appalled, but I'm more angry with myself than anyone else. I can't believe how irresponsible I've been.
I look at my father gingerly. Well, if you give any money to a meth addict, it's going to end up in their arms. I never saw any of it. I'm sure you sent a lot, but that's irrelevant. A meth addict turns all their money into meth. Nothing else matters to them. I didn't matter to my mother. All that was significant to her was her next fix. That was all that she ever cared about.
What about the cell phone I sent you? Did you get it?
You sent me a phone? I asked, looking aghast. No, I never got it.
He nods. I thought it would be great to text regularly, to speak often. I assumed you had your own phone, of course, But sending you one of your own, I thought it would start up a line of communication between daughter and father. I wanted to hear from you."
Well, she must have sold it. That's what meth addicts do. They beg, borrow, steal, and do anything they can to get another hit. It consumes their life. My father sighs grievously.
"I feel responsible. I should have come and visited you. I would have been able to see how you've been living, instead of sending you a flight ticket once a year to come and stay with me at a beach cottage for a few days. Your mother kept putting me off visiting you. Now I know why."
He puts his head in his hands and sighs.
"I've been a bloody fool, a goddamned fool. When I met your mother all those years ago in a bar, she was flamboyant, funny, pretty, clever even. I suppose I thought of your mother like that, an engaging, intelligent woman who adored her daughter. I know she said you could only stay with me for 7 to 10 days a year. I never challenged her on that. I was so grateful to have that precious, invaluable time with you. That's why it was you and me at a holiday place, so we could have fun together, as it was the only time we got to be together. But I had no idea what was really going on underneath the surface. I feel so regretful. I was just so presumptuous. I believed all the drivel your mum was spinning me. She phoned me a lot asking for money, my contribution to your dental costs, your tuition, stuff like that. Never once did I hesitate for a second to send her the money. But living with a meth addict, you must have been taking care of yourself all this time. For how long, Lulu? I dread to think."
"Since I was 9, I tell him rather begrudgingly. I might as well tell him the truth. Now is a good time as any, to let my father know how uninvolved and disengaged he's actually been in my life. I laugh. I've never been to a dentist in my entire life, I tell him. My father looks appalled.
"What? Are you joking? That's not good. I'll have to get that sorted out for you."
"Don't worry," I reassure him. "I've been looking after myself. I even learnt to cook when I was 9 years old, as sometimes my mother was so wasted from her drugs, I had to learn to cook for myself. And sometimes," I pause, "sometimes there was no food in the house. Sometimes I'd go to bed really hungry. I had to eat newspaper to stop my stomach from growling so much."
"Oh, my God,"
said my father, taking me into his arms and kissing the top of my head.
"I don't know what to say, Lulu. I'm so sorry. No wonder you're so skinny," he says, looking at me. "I thought you were skinny because girls your age are so obsessed about their weight. I had no comprehension that you were starving." "Come," he says, "let's go home now. Get out of this hellhole of a place."
I watch my father take my duffel bag from me, along with my picture of the world. He places it into the trunk of his car. I can see him glance at it briefly. I bet he's wondering why I have a picture of the world with me, but I'm not sharing that secret, not with anyone. As I sit in my father's SUV, with the smart leather seats, I pull the safety belt over my chest. I smell money in his car. When you're as poor as I've been all my life, leather seats smell of money. My father starts up the engine. We drive away from the old trailer park that has been my home for so very long. My father puts on the radio, and then we drive away through the night, through the sad little beleaguered town, past areas where there are no street lights at all. "Where is home?" I ask. "Do you live on your own?" I know very little about my father's life. I don't even know where he lives. I've only spent time with him at a holiday cottage every year for a few days.
"You mean you don't know?" he asks, looking bewildered. "I suppose in the circumstances I shouldn't really be surprised. I sent you a wedding invitation a few months ago. Your mother told me you couldn't come to the wedding. I'm married now."
He laughs for a second.
"I'm married to a divorced OBGYN. So you have a stepmother, a stepsister, a stepbrother, who are about your age, 16 and 17 they are. They will be great friends with you, I'm sure. Your step-siblings know all about you. They've learnt about you from a long time ago, and they've been dying to meet you. We live in the Colorado countryside together on a large plot of land in a farmhouse. It's spacious and big. We even have horses. It's an amazing lifestyle. I know you'll be very happy there. The house belongs to my wife. She raised her children there.
This is too much for me to take in. It's official. My dad's rich. I have 2 step-siblings who are possibly pretentious rich kids who have had everything they ever wanted all their lives. The thought makes me want to hurl. They've never known what it's like to drown under the weight of your own impoverishment, to struggle to stay afloat. They possibly never had a starving day in their entire lives. I'm almost certain they're going to look down on me with a condescending mockery. I'm going to sleep, I tell my father, as I'm consumed by my exhaustion. This day has taken everything out of me. It's about 1 p.m. in the morning when my father wakes me up in the front seat of his car. "We are here," he says. I open my eyes to see the tall silhouette of a farmhouse caught under the ethereal shadows of the moon. It looks like a 2-story symmetrical farmhouse with huge windows, but it's too dark to see clearly. But it looks like a palace to me. Anything would look palatial after the trailer I've lived in for so long. So that's the end of part 1 today, and tomorrow we'll go on to part 2. So until next time, goodbye and good night.